see here Mars stimulates Mercury heliocentrically. Mercury heliocentric is sort of out of the picture, and so is Venus over here. I could go into this chart a little more. I just wanted to use this as an illustration of how I approach things. Here I have all the cycles of the planets around the outer edge. Yeah, here we have a Jupiter heliocosm. It's a 7-pointed star that I use as a symbol for it. Here we have another on her Neptune. So Jupiter has a qualifying effect on Neptune. But this is the heliocosmic system, or the cycles before birth. I would use, yes, heliocosms are just conjunctions with the sun of any of the inner planets and their conjunction with the sun, and the cycle, the spiral cyclic cycle that they create. So when you're dealing with a standard chart, you're dealing basically with orbital rotary motion. I wanted to find a way of putting spiral cyclic motion into the chart. I think I actually the next few pages may explain that a bit more. Here we have the three motions in the long body of the solar system. This is basically the sun moving through space. These are the orbits of the planets around here. It's a rather spotty graphic, I know, but you have the inner planets rotating around the center very fast, and the outer planets, Pluto, every 250 years. The 250-year cycle matches up Pluto with Venus, Jupiter, and the Trigon, and Uranus. I'm sorry, there are 5 planets, or 5 planets, because Saturn's involved, that actually line up in this 250 to 1,500-year cycle. So that I cover in another book I wrote on the destiny of the nations revisited. So I have these 2 books that are, I should probably just point them out a bit. One is on Jupiter, the purple one, and this green one is on Destiny of the Nations. I cover 3 countries in terms of illustration, but in both of those I discuss these long-range cycles and how one applies to the individual and one applies to nations. So here you have direct forward motion, forward progressive motion in the vertical axis. In the spiral cyclic motion, you have spirals going as the sun is traveling north towards Capricorn, towards what's called the solar apex, or the sun's wave. And so these 3 different types of motions, the forward motion could be charted and put in the chart in terms of nodes, the nodal axes. But that's sort of, it doesn't affect people, I think, as much as, unless it's really exact on their planets, as much as the perihelions. When you look at the perihelions, or the closest approach of the planet's orbit to the sun, that's in a particular sign that lasts for a very, very long time, as long as the nodes pretty much for 1,000 or 2,000 years. So it's another qualifier in the chart that I take a good look at. I'll just notate it in the chart, etc. Let's see. So we're looking at the annual cycle of Jupiter. Just Jupiter going through the signs. It's through the signs, basically ingresses through the signs. So it goes through the cycle of, in this case, of it. From 1783, there was a cycle broken by 5-month periods. It's basic. The ingresses are basically month by month, until all of a sudden, after 7 of these cycles, you have a break of 5 months. Then you go to a series of 11 cycles, basically, on average. You can see a 10 and a 12 there, but basically it's 11 years. Every 11 years, you have another 5-month break. The whole cycle is 83 years. So this little line up here is 3 sets of 83 years, 252 years. It ties into the 250-year cycle. Let's see. I guess that covers that. There are 8 sets in total, but and so it differs from the heliocosm, which has 7 sets. It's just a different way of looking at things. How many did I pass? Here's the heliocosm. Oops, used the wrong. I had another symbol there for Jupiter, which is like a sun with about 16 rays, and the substituted a moon and a star, Venus and the moon. But at any rate, this is the symbol I use for the Jupiter cycle, just because it runs in sevens in so many different dimensions. Here's another 83-year cycle, but it's the cycle composed of the conjunctions with the sun. Here you have the start of a cycle or the end of a cycle with 10 conjunctions. It goes through the signs, but in the 10, it misses Aries and Pisces every 7 cycles. In an entire cycle of 83 years. So here you have another 80 years, 3-year cycle times 3, you get 252 again, or 248 actually. It's the Uranus cycle that's 252, I'm sorry. And Venus cycle and changing arms is 251 years. So all these things have been matching up in very interesting ways the last couple thousand years. And I'll just leave that to the books to explain because I'm not sure how easily I could explain it now. The Jupiter heliocosm cycle, it creates basically a 7-pointed star. When you, how to explain this? These are sets of cycles. It'll move from let's see, the years here. I wish I had a printout I was looking to. But it'll start with a set of, in 1881 I think this is. It moves on to can't really tell. It's explained in the book a lot better than I can explain it right on the spot. I'm sorry, my mind is not quite focused on the explanation here. But basically, how many years does this cover? I think it's 2 83-year cycles. I'm afraid I'm going blank on this right now. So I'll just pass and move on. Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
My function essentially in this is to try and be Mercury for you. And so I think that what needs to be clarified right at the beginning is that you're talking simultaneously about 2 different things. One, you're talking about just the ordinary orbiting cycle of Jupiter around the Sun. And we talk about that in terms of 12-year cycles. You're familiar with that? Goes through all the signs. That is one rotation of Jupiter around the Sun. But he's also simultaneously talking about something called the heliocycles. Now that, every planet does that. It comes into a conjunction with the Sun. Now currently we're most popularly aware of that because the whole of humanity is becoming aware of the Venus heliocycle. So what Peter is just doing is taking us into another heliocycle. We're concerned about the Venus one because the whole Mayan calendar phenomena of 2012 is tied in to the conjunctions of Venus and the Sun. So he's describing a whole series of cycles in which Venus comes into conjunction, goes through an orbit, and comes back into another conjunction.
In a different location.
That's right, every time.
And creating a 5-pointed star with Venus. And a 7-pointed star in terms of sets with Jupiter. I needed the data half of the page to really explain that well, and I realized that. I'm sorry, I didn't realize how important that would be. But here, you have the annual ingress cycle, but this is over a period of 83 years. It starts with 7 ingresses in Aquarius and begins the regular 11 ingresses with Virgo. Now, this here, this is better. This will help it a lot more. These are the years starting with, oops, no, come back here. Starting with the year 797, Sagittarius started the short sets, the little sets of 7 cycles, of 7 ingresses, and then another set of 7 11-year ingresses. Now, these are ingresses, and this is not the heliocosm of the conjunctions with the Sun. So this is getting closer to the diary. We're in this cycle right now, from 1949 to 2032. This set started with a short set of Sagittarius and then continued with 7 sets starting with Cancer. So there's this transition from Sagittarius to Cancer. We're in a cycle now where we're transiting from Aquarius to Virgo, and those happen to be the signs where Jupiter rules on the soul level and on a hierarchic level. So from year 1451, DK says this is when the petals of the heart center started turning upwards instead of downwards as the solar plexus was. That's when humanity generally started that process of the petals turning upwards. So I thought that was very interesting and probably associated with Jupiter and probably associated with this cycle. So I think we have a lot more to look forward to in terms of, another 1,500 years or so and 1,600 years. Oops, sorry. Or 600
these
years.
all being Aquarius, why it's the Aquarius Virgo set?
Right. It's because that's the data page I really need, and I don't have. I'm sorry. It's in the book. How can I explain this? Okay. If you look at the set starts with 7, so that would be Aquarius. Then you have 7 sets of 11 ingresses divided by 5 months, by the 5-month period. Those all start with Virgo. They're actually this diagram I can now explain coherently, I think. It starts with the Aquarius short cycle. Then the long cycles, all of the standard 11-year cycles, are these. It starts with Virgo, and this is the case with almost all of these, except for the ones that are labeled 6. Those will start with Leo, so we'll have an Aquarius-Leo period, which is very exciting. And in the beginning, we had an Aquarius-Libra cycle to start. So generally, it hit almost throughout. It hits Virgo, then it hits 1 in Cancer, 3 in Gemini, 1 in Aries, starting with Aries, of the 11-year cycle, ingress cycles, and then 1 in Pisces. So what you have here is a reaffirmation of the second ray signs, sort of focused on Gemini in this case, but I imagine in other cycles it'll be quite different.
It's an interesting tie-in to Philip's talk, in that we have humanity facing this tremendous crisis point. It has a lot to do with the opening of the heart. It has a lot to do with Jupiter.
Exactly.
The Jews symbolized by Virgo.
Mm-hmm.
Humanity as the Jew. And we're in this period of time in which we are in an Aquarian. In other words, there is a new dispensation opening up for us in this theme of the primary human dilemma.
That's very interesting. Historically, too, as of 1492, the Jews were expelled from Spain, and a lot of groups went to Venice right early, and the successful groups that established publishing industry, the Aldine Press and various others, they were the revivers of classical literature, the publishers of the translations and the translators of classical literature. a lot of which was taken from the Arabs in Spain and the culture, the peculiar culture that existed in Spain, the very mixed culture that existed there, the Ladinos and all the rest. So I should move on. I hope this is clear, and I hope this is sort of interesting. You find that interesting a bit. But Jupiter diary itself. Now we're getting to the second phase of my talk, I hope, where we're actually dealing with something practical that can be used to examine our own lives. Of course, we all, 83 years, 84 years is pretty much the limit of our lifetimes, 100 years, I like to say. But we'll go through 8 cycles, more or less, of Jupiter. In the charts that I use, I like to actually number the cycles. This is Aquarius cycle 3, and say Taurus cycle 3, and then Leo cycle 4. All of a sudden, that depends on where your Jupiter was when you were born, etc. So the Jupiter's diary itself is based on ingresses rather than helicosms. The helicosms are used on the natal chart, as I sort of pointed out in the earlier charts. I wish I had a page of all the helicosms just to be able to compare them. I have them in both books, I believe. So here, it's important for each individual to discover for themselves what achievements, events, crises, syndromes reappear in the same sign. I think you'll find some very remarkable repetitions. Now, in terms of comparing the Venus diary, the Venus diary pretty much is dealing with your soul nature. It's dealing with your higher mind in relationship to the lower mind. It's more creative on the ground level, in a way. Jupiter is more synthesis. Jupiter rules the cross of synthesis, Saturn the cross of crises, and Mercury the cross of change. So we're dealing here more with synthesis. I like to look at Jupiter as it's not the ring pass knot of Saturn, which seems so very, very solid. It's very structural, and it's the physical permanent atom of the sun. But Jupiter is actually the magnetic energy that holds that ring in place. And Jupiter has a ring of its own, but it's actually best called a sphere. It's a sphere of influence. It's the sphere of the extent to which your radiation and your personality or your soul or whatever energies you have to bring to the world, the extent to which it can extend itself. So it's a sphere of influence, a sphere of interests, and it's meant to be inclusive. Jupiter is the ability basically to see things in a very broad way, include what resonates, and then work with everything, events, circumstances, people, as factors in a creative project or in a creative life or just in creative experience, just passive experience. So Jupiter can be approached like all the other planets, either passively or proactively, and it's a fascinating topic for me. I think there's a time when you need to sit back. There's a time when you need to be active. This everyone experiences, but also there's a time when you can begin, as Michael mentioned and many other people have mentioned, when you can begin to take the energy of the rays or the planets and the signs and use them proactively, just by spontaneously generating the energy and applying it, either subtly or directly on the personality level. So I wanted to make this point because really the Jupiter cycle will be very different for everyone. And even though it represents a whole spectrum of factors for everyone, it has a really different impact on individuals, depending on all the factors you can imagine. So I won't even mention them. So here we have the Jupiter diary form. I think it's best based on the fixed cross, particularly for students, spiritual students. You could base it on I divide it into sets of 3 signs. So here you have, personally, I prefer starting with Aquarius and then ending with Aquarius so I can compare those two cycles in particular. But then the crises for me tend to happen in Leo. But these, I just put these in at random basically to see what sorts of things you can add to the chart that I actually hand out with the book. It's a graph of the exact dates of ingress, and you can just fill in, make Xerox copies preferably at first, and then fill in events in your life and see what happened this year, that year, 12 years ago, etc. But here I've added the outer planets too, just because I want to know what's qualifying the Jupiterian energy. Down here, what do we have? Oh, we didn't quite get to, we're here at 87. We didn't get to the Capricorn phase. So that was quite interesting in the early 90s, I guess. But these outer planets will definitely have an impact on the Jupiterian energy. But what we're focused on is the Jupiter positions here. So here's the lineup of fixed signs, Aquarius. This is the third Aquarius cycle in a person's life. Say they started out with Jupiter in Capricorn. Then that would mean that they're 35 years old, more or less. 3 Jupiter cycles of 11 years, and then a couple for the sign difference, or 1 or 2 for the sign difference. So here you go. This person evidently was actually born with Jupiter in Libra or Virgo. We don't know which. But this is just a sample anyway. But that's how you would read it. Yes?
Are you saying that in 1973 that Jupiter and the Sun were conjunct?
No. The diary is based on ingresses, and the heliocosms I only use for the natal chart, for putting around the planets of the natal chart. The ingress is just the entry into a sign. The exact day, the first day, this is not the second and third times it's ingress, but the first day that it's ingressed into a sign. On the second, February 23rd. Exactly.
And in the next year, it entered Pisces on March 8th.
Right. And third. And here we have that 5-month jump. 76, and it usually happens in the same year. In 76, we jumped from March in Taurus. We also had Gemini in the same year, Jupiter and Gemini the same year. So it was more or less, divided into twos, because Gemini lasted throughout the end of the year, 1976. 1975. Mm-hmm. Well, you could look at it that way, but no. When it enters these signs, yes. You want to look at those dates, and everything happened between February 23rd and the 8th of March of 74. All that will be more or less Aquarius. There is a retrograde period where it'll go back into Capricorn, but I'm just dealing with the entrance. I think the entrance basically sets a tone, and you can do the fine points, if you want to. And if you actually set this out in detail, like 3 signs per page with all the scores of events on the side, you can calculate the retrograde periods when it actually went back into the sign before. But that's very technical. It can be interesting at times, but basically this is quite efficient and operational as far as I've discovered, and the few people I've worked with.
So are you saying with this that in addition to being sensitive to when Jupiter enters a sign,
Yes.
that you're particularly emphasizing when Jupiter enters the 4 fixed signs.
Yes. I think that that's important for disciples and for spiritual students, just at large. Anyone interested in a spiritual life is distinct. Well, anyone really. Because for people who are not spiritually interested, these are going to be crisis signs to a great extent. So it'll just be interpreted on a more mundane level. Well, it'll be mundane for all of us. But still, with spiritual students, you can interpret it more esoterically. So, yeah, here I just mentioned it's important to repeat this sign, I think. I find setting this up in pages of 5 sets very useful. It's a very abbreviated form. In my long form, I just use 3 signs per page, and that gives me a real sense. I can compare those cycles much more in detail and see what's occurred in the past. At any rate, not to basically, I'm going to actually contradict myself a little bit, because I think one of the main problems for all of us is this network of thought, which is based on memory, it's based on past, tradition, everything taken for granted. And looking through the rearview mirror, we don't really want to do that. What we want this to do is to see how we've responded to Jupiter influences in the past and transcend it, make it better. So I suggest setting up keynotes and noting keynotes for the signs in the past, and then setting a goal keynote for the future in both of these diaries, the Venus and the Jupiter. I think it can be quite useful at any rate. Here we have the 3 crosses: mutable, fixed cross of light, cardinal, and the 3 rulers, Mercury, Saturn, the fixed cross, and Jupiter, the cardinal. Change, crisis, and synthesis, personality, soul, spiritual monad, or triad. 4th kingdom, 5th kingdom, approaching the 5th kingdom at the end of the fixed cross, and planetary and solar hierarchies. Goals of, say, self-possession for integration of personality. 3 initiations of the threshold, higher initiations. Karmic tests for the body of humanity. 9 tests of Scorpio, which are like introductory tests in a way, of purifying the 3 lower vehicles. And 12 tests of, I call them, well, the 12 tests of Hercules. The tests, the beloved of Hera, queen of the gods, and queen of form, basically, and of the marriage of form and soul and spirit. You have the 12 tests, I call them the 12 tests of planetary responsibility. There are also 12 methods of service. I think the labors of Hercules actually describe methods of service in the signs. It's like the chart in general. You can't say, because Aries is at the beginning, it's the most primitive, and Pisces is the most advanced because it's at the end. It does happen. There are certainly arguments for Pisces, but you, in any of these signs, basically you're constantly revolving 4th dimensionally around through the signs, planets, and the zodiac. So you have to take everything into consideration and set up a balance in the chart, see what's most important, what the fulcrum points are. And going down I'll just read them out. The 4 forms, the mental unit, the 4 forms of the personality, of the environment, the form of the devotee, and the form of the causal body. These are the 4 forms that all humanity faces attached to the mental unit. And then I'd like to just mention, I just wanted to set up a set of 4s here. I think the 4 reviews of DK that he mentions in Dina and Discipleship in the New Age, it's the review of light, of joy, of divine indifference, and of the attitude of the observer. I think they're quite useful, and they do relate to the soul for sure. Then on this cardinal cross, we're dealing with the assimilation of the higher ethers found in telepathy. So personality, here we are. 10 minutes? Okay. Let's run along. Let's see. Yes. Well known by the synthetic life, that which synthesizes spirit, soul, and body. These are the three forms of will that are understood by the synthetic life that includes all of us. It's basically the attempt of Bailey and DK to express or see how Sanakumara, or the planetary entity, divine Manasaputra, or the Logos, or the heavenly man, would look down into his vehicles via the aspect of will. So the first is just the conditioning of the life aspect, setting the pace for the evolution of forms, not form itself, and the force and endurance of life. Then the will which brings fulfillment, which is very much related to Jupiter. The will which conquers death, which is illusion, and it's on the mental plane. It's basically related to the brain and not to the heart. And in very true sense, it's a figment of the imagination. I took the quotes out just directly to make it nice and clear, because Bailey's language is sort of unimpeachable anyway. Fixed cross on the wheels. The ordinary cross on the ordinary wheel. I've always loved this comment. I tease my friends with it all the time. Taurus, Scorpio. Powerful, focused, lower desire leads to death and defeat, the triumph of the lower nature, which eventuates in the awakening to satiety and death. The man is the prisoner of desire, and at the moment of consummation knows his prison. I think that's very funny. It really puts desire into perspective, I think, and it's, from a Buddhist point of view, it's sort of interesting to see it presented in the Western point of view, in a way. Leo Aquarius, we can deal with these a little later. I think I can march on to the next page. But on the reversed wheel, then Scorpio Taurus is the final victory of soul over form. What I found in doing the national charts is that enormous number of the nations I've dealt with, I guess I have folders on about 20 nations, and I'm only dealing with England, Poland, and France in this one, because they have undercurrents, historical undercurrents over the last 1,000 years, which are quite interesting. But I wanted to illustrate it with the event, with basically a timetable and events. Now, in all of these countries, when they're developing nationalism or national identity, the idea of a nation has many different forms. It's sort of nation-state, city-state, a dynasty. There's long-distance nationalism where loyalties lie elsewhere. Then there's premature nationalism that I think it's a little passage you might find amusing in there. At any rate, the attempt at unifying a nation through absolute, utter carnage and bloodshed, etc. It's horrifying, but it's the human story. And let's see. Let's move on to the next. Jupiter synthesizes the fourth and fifth kingdoms of nature. Now, the fifth kingdom of nature is ruled by rays 2 and 5. Fourth by 4 and 5 at present, as well as the 4 rays of attribute. Basically, ray 4, etc. We've talked quite a bit about that, and the 4 rays of attribute, I think, are directly related to the signs of the fixed cross. Now, just to look at this a little closer, ray 5, the factor of analysis, is coming in as the personality ray of humanity. The ray 4, the urge to creative life through imagination, is its standard tone. Rays 4 and 5 are also the present soul personality rays. The ray 5 governs humanity as a unit, as the Ajna center within the planetary constitution. So that's been discussed in previous talks today. Humanity, solar plexus, throat, and Ajna center, basically. This I go into a bit more detail. I don't know if I'm going to have much time, really. God, it's put some very interesting symbols in here. They don't, yeah, there's WinStar is not on that computer. So I think 4 is interesting to focus on. The world of harmonization. It's the world to destroy limitation, basically. Now, Ray 4 it focuses through Taurus, Scorpio, and Sag. It's sort of self-evident. But focusing on this, the idea of destroying limitation, not forms or ideas or any number of things you think need eliminating or, dissolving or, what can you say, transcending. But it's the war with the limitations that you brought in with you, the ones you actually chose before, as a soul before you came in, and the ones specific to your work, specific to your lessons, specific to your group relations. So it's interesting to find that Taurus, Scorpio pronounced in nations. It's the fight with limitation. And we know that humanity is all about the fight, whether it's in the fight of the soul to preserve universal values and to stand up for positive values rather than self-interest and the rest, self-will. Leo, I try to explain why Leo, Aquarius, and Sag are related to the will to action, because they're related to Venus, hierarchical ruler of Capricorn, the source of the solar angels from the cosmic mental plane, ultimately. The Leo is also associated with Sirius and the sign fusing the solar trinity with the Virgo quaternary aspect. This is on, I think it's 416 esoteric astrology. Venus and Cancer give birth to the fourth creative hierarchy on the mutable cross, not the cardinal, but through a cardinal sign. This is the lineup of the 3 solar periodical vehicles, which I'll deal with in much more detail, of the solar monad associated in some way with Pluto, Aries, the solar soul with Jupiter, Leo. So Jupiter and Leo, Jupiter becomes very important on that solar level, and on the humanity, the level of humanity or the solar personality, functioning through humanity, it's Venus and Cancer. And this, let's see, where are we now? Okay, and I'll skip these last 2. I'll try and print these out as a handout later if anyone's interested. And the transition from Scorpio to Sag, I think, is very relevant in terms of the position we're at right now. It brings about the conflict of the 2 stars of conflict. Scorpio's problem is basically mastery of kama manas, automatic emotional reactions, illumination, then dissipation of glamour, then the conflict of the dweller or the personality with the angel. And then the solar angel is eventually superseded by the angel of the presence, which is something quite different. In Sagittarius, we're dealing directly with intuition. And a couple of points I'd like to make, I think I made a little earlier, is that intuition is governed and nourished by Jupiter. It can come in when the Scorpio has mastered the misuse of memory. If memory is just unconsciously creating this network, this cobweb of thoughts that enthrall us, that chain us down, it's not enabling us to think or use the mind in a proactive way. This means the intuition is strong enough to take the place of the network of thought constructed by memory, tradition, everything taken for granted and seen through a rear-view mirror, conventional past self-referential thought, which has nothing to do with the thinking or the thinker in the causal body, and is a mere automated reaction by the personality in the lower mind, just habituated over lifetimes. So, yeah. Sagittarius test is the right use of right speed. That's very difficult for me sometimes. Major principles. will works destructively through the exoteric planetary rulers of the signs, but will, on the fixed cross, works constructively through the esoteric signs. That's it. Yeah.
What I perceive here are some really profound insights that are going to require a lot of pondering. Peter has put a lot together, but obviously 45 minutes is not time enough to deal with. So I recommend that you, is it for sale? Well, I recommend we buy the book. And, okay, well, thank you for that presentation.